Welcome to Wild and Exposed, your number one adventure, nature, and outdoor photography podcast. Wild and Exposed is hosted by Michael Mauro, Ron Hayes, and Jason Loftus. Thanks for tuning in.
Welcome to Wild and Exposed podcast. Tonight is the Stranger Danger edition of Wild and Exposed. We've got a voice that will be familiar to you that will be coming on. But first, before we introduce our guest, Jason, how are things doing in Utah?
It's going really good. But actually been able to get out and do a little bit of shooting. Went out and chased some velvet bulls and had some fun with that. And things are going good.
That wasn't in Utah, though, right?
No, that wasn't. That was a little cross the border trip. I went over to Colorado and had some fun over there. So
Excellent.
I drug my boy with me, Hunter, again. So we had a little father-son adventure. It was pretty fun. So
good deal. And Michael, How about Colorado?
It's hot.
I know you guys are still hot.
It's crazy hot, but they're calling for big time thunderstorms tonight, which would cool it off. But looking out the window, it does not look like it's going to happen.
Hey, guess what it was again here today?
Were you in the 70s?
Well, for a while, it did get up to 80, but we're low 80s. It's only 82, down from 100. So that was excellent. And for you Canadian listeners, I have no idea what the temperature is. It's about 34, right? Maybe. I don't know. We'll ask our guest.
Yeah, when he comes on. So I've got a lot of stuff to talk about, but I thought we could just talk about it in the podcast just because it's a catch-up show, kind of, and then we'll obviously have our guest going on too. So I'll just wait to fill everybody in on some new camera stuff.
So this guest he's a loquacious, verbose individual, and he's having trouble biting his tongue right now. So I think we probably should go ahead and introduce him before he falls out of his chair and kind of goes crazy.
Hey, Gary, well, thanks very much for having me on, boys. Thank you. I appreciate you having me on, and I just was wondering, Ron Hayes, there, if you could tell me what those words mean.
Which words?
Loquacious?
Verbose.
Verbose?
Means talkative.
Well, thank you then. Thank you again for having me on your podcast here today.
All right, so as you can hear, we've got a Canadian on the podcast. And Mark Raycroft, welcome back to Wild and Exposed.
It has been way too long, brothers.
It has.
Great to see your handsome faces. Makes my day.
Yeah, it's just like old times. Except
I want to sing a little song.
Oh.
But I don't.
So do I. So happy birthday.
Yours isn't allowed. No, that one's not allowed. No, we're not going there. Well, you can if you want. It's not my place to say. I was going to sing "Welcome Back." Well, I can't get it. I had it all afternoon.
No, that's not it.
No, I know.
So, Mark, what have you been up to?
I've been hunkering down, getting things looked after. Everything as predictable as every other year this year, right? This spring, this summer.
Oh, yeah. It's been exactly the same as every other year.
Been on the property, haven't left. Everything seems normal.
Only not.
No. What a year. It's been good. Super strange. And as, you know, it's unpredictable as everybody out there is experiencing across the board. Who knows, right? It seemed like a big deal when, here I'm going to throw something else out there. Like when Pearl Jam canceled their tour in March, it's like, guys, what are you doing? How did they know? Like a week later, everything's shutting down. But it's been a strange year. Time to catch up on things. Time to reflect. And missed you guys. Missed the show. Lots of thought processing. And, you know, I saw something recently, and Michael and I were talking a bit this afternoon, so he's going to not necessarily want to hear this again, but I saw a Charlie Brown comic strip, and I've been loving the memes this year. I try to keep the energy up with my friends and loved ones by sending them the humorous memes that I find on Facebook and stuff out there. And Charlie Brown and Snoopy are sitting at the end of this dock, and Charlie Brown says, "You only live once." And Snoopy says, "Correction, you only die once. You live every day."
Yep. And
So, guys,
even with today's, yeah, exactly.
well, make the most of the present, right?
Still have opportunities. Yep.
we're all
for sure.
healthy. We hope that continues. Our loved ones are healthy. We're hoping things improve. Here in Canada, interprovincial borders are opening up. Travel is opening up slowly. So I hope that continues. I have some plans for this fall. Was hoping to do some U.S. trips as well. Those are big question marks at the moment, but I know you guys have some definite opportunity to travel, as you have been doing, which is awesome. But it's hard.
Not enough, I can assure you.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
You know, we don't get
Yeah.
to talk to Canadians very much just on this podcast, and then I don't know how many people out there in our listening audience get to talk to Canadians. What's it like up there? I mean, you guys probably get a lot of the U.S. news and kind of know what kind of a crapshoot we're dealing with down here. What's it like up there? I think you guys have it more under control.
I'm just going to say it's a complete shit show in the United States.
Whoa.
We try to keep it family friendly, but
There are a lot of different variables too, though, right? You're talking about you have 330 million people in that space, whereas Canada has 33 million people.
Right.
So there's those things. It's more of a congested population, and there are other variables potentially at play too. I mean, it was quite concerning in the spring because it just kept ratcheting up, and the deaths as well as hospitalizations. But it's been better the past month, and that's what's caused different areas to open up again. And everything's, I mean, there's still the social distancing. There's laws in place that you have to wear a mask if you go inside a building. Outdoors, it's not mandatory as long as you're the 2 meters or 6 feet apart from the nearest person, unless they're in your bubble. You guys are in my digital bubble. So it's, you know, and part of it this spring. So as I've heard, I've been listening to the podcast all along, been loving it, and heard more and more content about, you know, aside from having the great guests that you guys have had, about what you can do during these times closer to home. And it's been the same story here. For the longest time, it was probably 6 weeks, maybe even 2 months, that we couldn't go anywhere. But then the parks and wilderness areas opened up and backcountry. So I've been doing more of that. Back 2 to 3 hours north of me, depending on which access point, is Algonquin Park. And it's an iconic park here in Ontario with lots of wildlife and wilderness access, especially on waterways. So a couple of friends and I, we hop in the canoes and take off for 3 or 4 days at a time into the backcountry. So that's been really good because it detaches from all the stress. And like you said, Michael, I mean, we're watching the news every day. I mean, who's not, as hard as some of that is, and definitely dialed into all the U.S. issues as well. You're our neighbors, love you guys, and you know, hoping everything for the best. And like I said, I mean, I want to be in Alaska. The last 2 years I was in Alaska now, right? And then September, Alaska, please. Other places we want to travel to. So hopefully things recover sooner than later.
Yeah, I don't have high hopes for that, but
I honestly was not even talking about COVID.
here's how we can change the subject. So, Mark, you said something about Algonquin, and you have started a new Instagram page or
Nice segue,
Instagram account, I guess is the proper term for that. Yeah. Tell us about that and what you're doing.
I don't think you're limited on how many Instagram pages you have. It's more of what you want to run, right? And the time involved. And it's still, I mean, my main page is where my heart and soul and main contributions go. But it was something that, with the time to reflect this spring, and just because of the time I was spending in Algonquin Park, and not knowing how long this craziness is going to go on, all of these serious restrictions and potential health concerns that are serious that way, is doing things closer to home. And so I started this page at Adventure Algonquin. And I thought about it, and I went on Instagram, and, you know, it took us a month in the beginning of Wild and Exposed, if not longer, to come up with a name. we'd talk on the phone, and it'd be like we come up with a name that we all loved, and as soon as you search it, it's gone, or some part of it's gone somewhere. It's so hard to find something that is catchy and ties into the content so well. This one, I don't know why. I just did this search, and Adventure Algonquin was still there. There's all kinds of people and outfitters that offer tours in Algonquin Park, because the Greater Toronto area has got 5-6 million people, and a lot of people aren't comfortable doing this on their own. Whether it's just a canoe trip, whether it's wildlife, nature photography, whether it's a fishing trip, going into the interior in a canoe where wild animals are in various weather conditions and in a canoe is something that a lot of people would like to be helped with, if not the first time, maybe many times. So when I came up and searched Adventure Algonquin, it was totally out there. And I'm like, holy cow, I've got to grab this. But then I looked at it, and this is the cool factor. Adventure Algonquin, when you put the two words together, real is in the middle, and it just stands out. It just glared at me. Adventure, real Algonquin, right? So when I was back in school 5 or 6 years ago, and and I was doing my weekends up in Algonquin when I could in the truck, and photographing moose and other wildlife, foxes and bears, and pine martens weren't as prevalent as they are now. A great place for those, as Instagram has revealed. I spent so much time there, but hadn't been there a lot over the past, I'm going to make a liar to myself now, because I said 5 or 6 years since I was in school.
Right. So
over the last 20 years.
2 or 3 months.
2 or 3 months,
yeah.
Plus or minus. Yeah. Because there's so many other places in North America that had captured my heart and we're traveling to, and just incredible experiences to be had across our continent and further abroad now too, that I didn't get there as often as I would like. So this spring allowed for that. And this Instagram page was a way to feature this location. And part of it too is as a businessman and in wildlife photography, this profession, as a lot of professions, especially this year, are in flux. What's happening. There's a lot of things being pulled back, a lot of, unfortunately, rate reductions. There's a lot of image purchase quantity reductions. Art budgets are going down. Advertising is going down. We all in the industry, the editing side, the photography side, the writing side, everybody hopes this recovers, but nobody knows for sure what's happening. So I felt it was smart to have various irons in the fire long term. So whether this is just a page that continues to fuel my time in Algonquin, along with my good friend Bill Gadzos, who I do these trips with very frequently, if not all the time he's with me. He's great at mapping it out, and great company, and his backcountry skills are pretty mad. So, and then a young fellow, Justin, who comes with us. So we do this stuff together, and it's been a great unplug. After 4 days in the backcountry, we come out and just, its stress levels are way down. We've had some fun experiences. We've had laughs. It's just super nice to sit by a campfire with just a few people, watch the sunset over the lake, hear the loons, and chill. Tell some stories, sleep in a tent. I have a story. I'm gonna go down a rabbit hole quickly about our first trip this spring. If
Not
I have
that we haven't already.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I didn't.
All
mean
he asked
you.
was the Instagram page, right?
No, I didn't mean you. But
this
go
is
ahead.
one of my closest bear encounters. Photographed hundreds and hundreds of bears over the years, black bears and grizzlies. And in Algonquin Park, being in Ontario, they're all black bears, obviously. And it's mating season. We were the first people in. They opened the backcountry on June 1st. Normally, we would go in mid-May as soon as the ice is out for trout fishing and just to get in and have the experience. So June 1st, they opened. We went in June 1st. So nobody had been in there since last fall. And it was about a 5-6 hour canoe trip in, a couple of portages, great campsite, beautiful view, great fishing. As I said, great company. Andrew, my son, was with me on this trip. So he and I were in a tent together. And Tyler was along too. And Tyler was the fellow who came to Alaska, did the Wild and Exposed vlogs with us, Ron, and that on that trip. Yep. Fantastic job. And so, he's still in the fold, and got to connect and have some nice time with him this spring too. But we're sleeping 2 a.m. The rain's coming down a bit on the tent, not super loud. I'm asleep, and it wakes me up in the rain. I hear these footsteps like right beside my head. And I'm like, okay, did I imagine that? And no, I hear again, woof, 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 like sounded like 6 inches from my head. So I had spray, bear spray, because we're so far in the interior, and just as a deterrent. There's times that you get a young adolescent bear that's just mischievous and have a reason, easy enough to deter it out of camp if necessary. So I had the spray, but the tent's closed, and I don't want to open the fly because I don't want to startle the bear. But years ago, I was filming bears on a privately owned piece of land in Minnesota. And for fun, I thought, a great interactive picture, I don't know if it ever sold, would be to set up a tent for a campsite, make a fake campsite, and have a bear go through. There were so many bears in this area. So I brought an old tent that I didn't care what happened to it. I set it up, and within 5 minutes, one of the biggest boars came out of the bush, walked over the tent, and just stepped on it and flattened it. So it was good for pictures, but this is going through my head while I'm sitting there in this dark tent with the bear right outside. I'm like, don't be too curious, buddy, because I can't spray you with the tent closed. So thankfully it went away. But it was, you all know, because of your experience with bears in the spring, you know how the boars walk with pushing their front pads in. Woof, woof. I could hear that going away, like 5, 6, 7 steps. When in the middle of this, Andrew wakes up, and he's 2 feet to my left, and he's looking at me like, what the heck's going on, Dad? Why are you sitting up with a bear spray in your hand? So I didn't want to freak him out, but I didn't want him to be unaware either, because if it did step on the tent, we would have to open the fly quickly, get outside, and try to scare it off.
So you never got to see the bear. You just knew, you just heard it, and so you never got to see if it was a great big bear or a little bear, or.
I think it was a big male from the weight it sounded of the steps, and it just was that time where they're starting to roam. And so, yeah, I could be held to some question because I didn't lay eyes on it, but just all my years of being around them. And it was so close. But
how did you, I guess my big question is, how'd you go back to sleep knowing that, you could just come back an hour later?
I was awake for probably 45 minutes, but from all of our experience filming and together guys too, that usually those boars are on a big walkabout. They can do 10 miles a day or more, sometimes far more. We've seen them do. We pick them up the next day a long way off. They're looking for love. So my hope was that, there was nothing in our campsite to keep him. And if there was, I would have heard it in the next 10 minutes if he was into something. We take food barrels in and hang them from the tree, suspend them up, and so nothing happened. Nothing was disturbed. And so after a bit, I figured he'd gone on. I just assumed that. And it's like everything else in life. I go back to that Charlie Brown thing, you only die once, but you live every day. If it's going to happen, it'll be bad news. It's going to happen, but I've got to get back to sleep. And he's probably gone. Right?
Got to get back to sleep.
Yeah, he's gone. It was a while. I slept the rest of the night just fine. It was a neat berm we were on between the lake and a big bog. So I think it was a travel corridor. There was moose droppings all over from the wintertime because it was exposed along the shore that I could see where they'd get sun and be warm. But anyway.
No tracks outside the tent.
Well, it was just like there was the type of soil.
The wrong type of soil for tracks.
Yeah, you wouldn't see it in there. Yeah. So.
Hey, I got to deviate just real quickly off of your story because Jason had something, and it kind of correlates with you were saying a bear can walk 10, 15, 20 miles a day, right? So Jason was photographing bull elk the other day, and we had heard about this bull, or he and Harlan Cooper, a good friend of the podcast, had heard about this bull, and everybody's kind of queued up to this location where we heard he was last at, right? And then Jason filled in the story from there.
Yeah. So Harlan spent a whole evening looking for this big bull and never could find him. Looked high, low, everywhere. Went, within probably 3-4 mile radius of this area looking for this bull and never could turn him up. So the next morning is when my boy and I showed up, and we went right through the area where this bull was and went to a different area looking for some different elk. And guess who was up there on the mountain where we were looking? This bull that Harlan was looking for. And the cool thing about this is literally 18 miles from where he was spotted the evening before.
No way.
So yeah,
This time of year.
it's this
Wow.
time of year. So he was definitely on the move and was looking for something specific. And we had that encounter with him, and he gave us a great morning. And then we looked for him that evening and couldn't turn him up again. So he disappeared on us, and then I think he showed back up again, but not while I was there. But yeah, pretty impressive that they can travel that far, and they will. And it's nothing for them when you think about it. But to us, that seems like a big deal. But to them, it's probably nothing, you know.
But how cool would it be? You know that bull probably does the same thing every year, right? It's like, oh, the switch turns, and he's like, I'm going to leave this low country because it's getting kind of hot, or there's better stuff to eat up high, and then all of a sudden, it's just like during the rut. You know, I've seen bull moose in Denali go 20, 30 miles in a day just on a whim, right? So It's just kind of a cool. We heard that other story too, Mark, about that bear in Jasper. That, what was it, a grizzly bear or a...
Yeah, they had just put radio collars for research on 10 or 12 grizzlies there in that big national park, and we heard through the grapevine it was pretty crazy that this boar had gone up over a snow-capped mountain that day and then back again. Wow. So, you know, what curiosity or what reason would it have to go up over a snow-capped mountain and back? So, yeah,
see what's on the other side.
Yeah. Oh, there it is.
Couldn't help himself.
Our good friend Harlan Cooper, we were talking with him the other day, and he's like, you need to give us a little bit more information about locations. So this is a good opportunity. Algonquin's cool. I've heard a lot about Algonquin, but how big is that park? And what's the best way for people to experience the park? Maybe the best months, the best, you know, what would you do? Fly into Toronto, rent a car and go? Or how does that work?
Definitely Toronto is the closest international airport. Easiest access. You would fly into Toronto, rent a car, and drive. Oh, there come my text. Turn the phone back on. 3 hours north. Very accessible, great highway system, no problem at all. What I would recommend, and it depends on the time of year, it is a very busy park, so things get booked up, especially during the summer months. So if one was planning to do it in the summertime, make sure the accommodations and everything is booked ahead of the trip. It's easier through fall and winter. And for wildlife photographers, honestly, lean for fall and winter. The fall foliage in Algonquin Park is one of the best places on planet Earth to experience it. If you time it during that 10-day, 2-week window, it's just breathtaking. Lots of hiking trails for great vistas and landscape opportunities. So the dew fall color would be a good time. It's busy then because a lot of people from the greater Toronto area do go for that reason. There are bus tours and stuff, but like every other national park, a lot of those are just, there's one main highway that goes through the park, so a lot of the traffic's there. When you get off the road, it quiets down significantly. But if it's through the summer months, you'd want to book your campsite ahead of time. It's all done online through Ontario Parks, super easy to do, but it is very easily accessed. And people from all over the world come there. You know, it's interesting because we have so many in the United States and Canada, so many famous national parks that are all worth seeing. You know, Yosemite, Yellowstone, Denali. They've got Banff and Jasper and the Rocky and the Icefields Parkway through Alberta. That's a must-do. You know, the California coast with the sequoias, the BC. There's so much to see. Algonquin Park, for a provincial park, gets a lot of attraction, a lot of attention, a lot of traffic. There have been fluctuations in population densities of wildlife over the years. When I started wildlife photography, there were a ton of moose, one of the best places for eastern moose. And they went down for a long time for a variety of reasons. Winter moose tick was a big contributor to that. And, you know, winter lasting into spring and them dying of hypothermia knocked back populations. But they've rebounded now. They're doing well this year. So moose sightings are up. Loons, practically every lake. And Algonquin Park's just dotted with waterways. So for the adventurous sort, there are operations that offer guided excursions, whether it's a day trip, whether it's a multi-day trip. There are also various outlets that rent canoes, rent food barrels, various things, and can get people up to speed on that. if they're comfortable doing that kind of adventure on their own. The maps are very well labeled. The portages from lake to lake are, for the most part, exceptionally well labeled. So it can be a really great adventure. And honestly, it's just a beautiful Canadian Shield, rocky, white pine, hardwood forests as well. It's a great landscape. It's not as dramatic as you get in the Rockies or in, Utah, right? But Utah is just spectacular where Jason lives, but it's a beautiful landscape and is accessible. And that's one of the things, social media, you can easily find all kinds of content that's coming out of there just by searching the hashtag Algonquin Park.
Or
an idea.
Or Adventure Algonquin.
Well, even better. Thank you, sir. Yeah.
So I just looked. It's 1.89 million acres, which is freaking huge, right? I mean, you look at Yellowstone is 2 million acres. And you said there's only one road that goes through that park?
There's one primary highway that cuts across the southern half of the park, Highway 60, from east to west or west to east, depending where it'll be west to east from Toronto. And there are other access points. Our next trip, we're going way around to the top, so it'll be a 5-hour drive, and we're going to go in at a place called Brent to Cedar Lake, and then go in another portage from there to another lake to camp on. Those places are far quieter than the Highway 60 corridor. But for the first trip and for fall foliage, and to cover ground to spot animals like moose, the Highway 60 corridor is great. It's also good for foxes. There are loons in the waterways near there, and pine martens in that region too.
But if you want to do the canoe thing, you kind of need some experience doing that, right? I mean, that's not something that some greenhorn would just say, oh yeah, I'm going to get a canoe and we're going to do what, like how far is an actual canoe trip? I guess as long as you want it to be, but you could probably go for miles and miles and miles if you wanted to, right?
Yeah, I definitely recommend experience. And if you don't have experience, then it would want a guide for all the safety reasons. Wilderness guides have all their wilderness first aid safety stuff. They also have an in-reach so they can contact in the case of emergency. Waterways, the lakes and waterways are all different sizes. Canoes are all different as well. Different types of canoes, size, weight for portaging is important, and stability is another thing. So, and then your gear. These places that offer trips, and it's something we may do when COVID settles down. We'll see, but offer the gear where you have a dry bag. That's important. And then, you clip it into your canoe so that if you go in the drink, the bag still stays with the canoe and everything stays dry. There are people who haven't planned that far ahead who just tie things in garbage bags or just a regular backpack, and they have to be prepared for it to get wet if that's the case. Not that falling out of a canoe is a common occurrence, but it can happen and you have to be prepared. And same with a life jacket, you have to have all those things. Canoeing itself is a skill that I have not mastered and continue to learn. Our friend Sean James, who was on the podcast, he's an exceptional canoeist, and I've got to meet him up there one of these days soon and hope to learn from him on some of that. But each trip, we get a little better, a little more better technique. But Andrew and I had a close call this spring. And a lot of things in wilderness, live and learn, right? We approach it with practical common sense frame of mind and think after 20 years that, I'm a safe guy. I can do all this, and not to put a slant on Adventure Algonquin, but we crossed a big lake right after ice out and the wind picked up, and I'm not going to do that again in the canoes that we're using. I'll do the shore. I'll pitch a tent, stay in out another day. That was a live and learn one-time experience. We made it across. Everybody did, but that's no fun to me. But there are canoes, people that I know of that have done grand adventures. Tim Irvin, for instance, up in the Yukon, I guess, I can't remember the river he went on, but there are canoes that you can put a tarp over that fasten down. So, there are people who go through whitewater, all different boat systems, depending on how you're set up. So if they're going to do a canoe, then definitely they need to learn how to be in a canoe.
So what are the photographic opportunities out of a canoe? Are you able to, do you have your camera out when you're on the edge of a lake and it's not big chances of turning over or falling in the drink? Is there an opportunity to sneak up on not sneak up, but, float up onto a moose and get some cool pictures, or loons or whatever? Or is it more just a get from point A to point B?
That's definitely an opportunity, and that's how a lot of it's done. There are moose you can walk up to on hiking trails, which are all over Algonquin Park. There are open areas, hydroline stuff where you'll see moose. There are ponds, roadside water ditches and stuff where the moose pop out. But a lot of it is done from canoe, and you can. It all depends on what you're planning to do. If you're going a long way, so when we do a 5 or 6 hour trip in, I usually don't have a camera out because we're on a mission. But that's something that I'm researching and I thought at some point we might get into in today's podcast. But I had a system for this, and now I don't. I just have the 2 to 500 on the 850, and because of the backpacks, there's all the portaging. You try to pack very efficiently, so you don't. If you've got let's say you've got a 2 mile portage, you don't want to have to do it twice, ideally, because that, you do it 3 times to do it twice, because you got to come back and then back again. So we have really fine-tuned the gear we take, but to take the 2 to 5 means its own case because of the length of the lens, another backpack. And I have a big backpack on. My arms are full. I'd have to put a front pack on. Then I'm going to trip over the deadfalls or anything slipping. So I used to have the Nikon 80 to 400. The first generation, don't touch it. I had that. The second generation was very good. I sold it to my sweetheart friend, Debbie Brewer, and it's gone. That fit in the fanny pack, which would go in front on the camera. And that would be great. Enough stabilization for water shooting from a canoe. Since I hadn't done that in a number of years, I don't have a current setup, so I've been researching it. Michelle Dahlberg is somebody I know who shoots Nikon mirrorless, and I was communicating with her last week. There's so much going on, guys. It's dizzying with it's so exciting, but I don't know. I want to sprint in like 3 directions for this gear, the 3 different companies, but there's no perfect setup today. And it's just, but she said the Nikon, now here we're going to go. We'll have a bit of an arm wrestle here. Z6.
Yep, Z. Yep, got it.
Z6.
Z6.
All right. The Nikon Z or Z6 on the 500 millimeter PF lens. She can put a 2 times extender on that, making 1,000, and shoot 4K video and love it. Handheld. Because it's a small lens, because there's an image stabilizer in the lens and the camera body, it works. And she's a phenomenal photographer. You can find her on Instagram. She's a Nikon ambassador. I don't doubt what she's saying for a moment, but it harkens back to me like when we bailed on the tripod. The first time I shot without the tripod with the 2 to 400 Nikon, it was almost like a mistake to realize it could nail the shots. And then I forgot the tripod. And then for years, various friends were like, "What are you doing, man?" And anyway, Don Kessler used to say to me in the field, a good friend of mine from Alberta, he said, no tripod, no shots, Mark. No tripod, no shots. Every time he saw me walking by him. It was a great laugh all the time. Love you, Don. But it could do it. And it's the same kind of transition right now. The whole idea of shooting video without a gimbal with just a camera body and lens seems hard to believe that it'd be that good. But that's what I'm searching for. I'm searching for a new mirrorless camera setup that's small enough to fit in a pack that I can carry on my front in the canoe. So it's not exposed. It's not rolling around in the canoe. I don't have to reach for it. And I can handhold to do stills or video. The 80 to 400, I could put it on the 850 and I could do stills with confidence. But I want to have YouTube content. So I want to be able to do both video and stills. So that's where I'm at. The R5, I'm pretty excited. I mean, I've had Nikon my whole life. I'm pretty excited about that and the specs. The one thing about the Z6 that holds me back is it's a 24 megapixel sensor. I love the 45 megapixel sensor on the 850 because back in the day when I was on Wild and Exposed podcast, I pointed out the revelation. I could take a horizontal frame, crop it vertical, and still have a bigger file that would work on a magazine cover. So you have so much play post-production with that size of sensor. So I don't want to go back to a 24 megapixel sensor if I'm shooting stills as well, if I don't have to. So the R5 at 45 megapixel fits that. Anyway,
well, before we go back or go over to Canon, maybe the other 2 Nikon shooters in the room here ought to give us a little thought process on what Mark was just saying. Have you guys? I just saw it today. I just saw on Instagram something about that Z6 coming out. So that's just like what?
No, the Z6 has been out.
Oh, what's the one that
It's
just
been
came
out
out?
for
Then?
Z5. And they think that it's going to be a precursor to a Z8, which would be more in line with the D850 in a mirrorless body. Now, if that happens, it's going to have to be pretty special. Canon, for the longest time, and this is why I switched to Nikon, to be honest with you, but they would do these incremental improvements, and it would be, 4 megapixels, and that was it. You didn't get anything else out of the camera. You didn't get anything else out of the sensor. And that's what kind of frustrated me, because the Nikon D850 made this huge jump. And if you look at the R5 right now, I think there are still some things that are yet to be determined. On paper, it's a miracle of modern technology that they crammed all of that into a mirrorless body. But I think, there are some things with the heat. There's some limitations. If you're filming in, 8K, which it has the ability to do. If you're filming in 8K, you have about 19 minutes before you hit that overheat temperature in body. And that's, at room temperature. So if we're filming out in the wintertime, obviously we're probably going to get more time with that, or more time out of that. But that is a potential limitation. If you're filming, it's got the ability to film 4K at 120p, which is, that nice, buttery, smooth, slow motion that you like. And that, Mike, you've been able to do, even more than that with your Red camera. So to be able to do all those things with just a mirrorless camera, plus have a 45 megapixel sensor to capture stills with. And the other thing about this camera is it's got in-body image stabilization. So you combine that with image stabilization in your lens, and you have up to 8 stops of image stabilization. So you can do a lot of handheld video and even some B-roll shots, hiking through the woods or whatever, with that camera not on a tripod.
Or a gimbal.
I've never said it like that before. Or a tripod. Yeah, a gimbal. I mean, with a gimbal, it's gonna be, almost like filming with the hyper smooth on the GoPro Hero 8 or the DJI, the action cams. So there's a lot of advantages to this new technology. Then you look at stinking Sony. They finally come out and say, yep, we're going to release the A7S III, which is basically the biggest limiting factor to that is 12 megapixel sensor. And they've basically said it's not a still image camera. This is a video camera in a still image camera's body.
Close.
It's basically in a mirrorless body, but it is a video camera, and it's awesome for video. I think they're going to have 4K 120. That hasn't been confirmed yet, but that 12 megapixel sensor, you hear that and you think, there's no way. But what that does for your ability to utilize low light and to film in low light, without cramming all those pixels on the sensor and causing more noise, or without more heat on the sensor causing more noise, it's a big advantage. So if you're a A9 shooter and you wanted a video system as well, this would be a great option, and you still have a pretty light kit. I think the limitation that Canon and Sony both have is that I'm flabbergasted that those two big companies can't do what Nikon has done with the lens technology and come out with the 500 PF, which is a 5.6 all the way through. And the rumor is, and I don't know how reliable this source is because I've only met the guy once, but his friend works for Nikon, and they are testing a 700 PF, which is not going to be a lot bigger than the 500 PF. And it's a 5.6 throughout. So why can't Canon and Sony come out with that same lens technology? I mean, I don't know why they don't share. Nikon already uses Sony's sensor, so why not share some of that lens technology as a payback? But there's, like you said, Mark, there's so many things going on right now that it's just like, what do I do? And I think the answer for me is, I thought I knew. I thought I was going to jump, right out of the starting blocks, be back to Canon. But I think the answer is I'm going to wait a month and wait until I talk to some people who have reviewed these systems and just kind of wait and see. But the lightweight system, or the lightweight potential that we have, I think is tremendous. Unfortunately, some of the lenses that Canon's come out with, this 800 that fits on their mirrorless system, it's an R mount lens, but the stinking thing is f11, which is not even practical for me. It maybe is for somebody who's just going on a trip and they want that long lens option. It would be a cheap rental for them to take with and be able to have some reach. But from an artistic standpoint, and we talked about this before, Jason and Michael and I, I think it was the last podcast, wasn't it? Just that f11 doesn't give you the opportunity to separate your subject from background, and there's just a lot of limitations there. And even the 100 to 500, it sounds like a great lens, but on the 500 end, the smallest aperture you have is what, 7.1, I think. So there's still, the camera's great, and I think if you adapt it and still use, like Michael's got that 200 to 400 with the built-in 5.6, I think that's still a great option, but it's adapted to the system, and then you're not really losing the weight. You're still carrying a little bit more weight, but that's a great lens. It doesn't get any sharper than that. But some people like him, some people don't. That Frono's photo, I saw some images that he did just as a test for the Animal AF in the R5. Man. And he goes through, kind of the technique he was using. He was holding it out away from him. He had the Atomos Ninja on there so that he could film the viewfinder of the camera. And he's holding it out away from his body so he can watch that. And at 1/320th of a second, he's just nailing these, with the Animal AF and the internal stabilization, the IBIS that camera has. It's crazy. But I still don't know which way I'm going to go.
I don't think it's perfect. So
That's why you just got to do what Mike does. Yeah, the only thing he doesn't have yet is Nikon, right?
No, I have a Nikon.
Oh, you do?
I have the D500 and the.
It's got the D500 and the 2 to 5.
Yeah.
So there you go. I mean, you just get all the systems, and then whatever comes up, you're ready. You just grab what's coming up next.
Yeah. Well, what are you gonna do, Jason?
47 Pelican cases whenever you travel anywhere.
Yeah, that's a problem coming up. What's your thought process?
For me, my thought process is, we've talked about on the show, but I did buy the Sony A7R4 and the 2 to 600, and it's been a great addition to my arsenal. But I haven't really dumped any of my Nikon gear, and I honestly don't plan on dumping my Nikon gear. I think I'll continue to keep both systems for right now. I think from a mirrorless standpoint, Sony's got the advantage right now, and even with the R5 coming out, the IAF tracking and all that stuff is just as good, from what I've heard, on the A9 too.
Oh yeah, for sure.
As it is on that R5. So, Sony's definitely the leader of the mirrorless game, right? But this Canon camera, don't get me wrong, it sounds amazing. I'm excited to hear, what it has to offer. But yeah, that's my thoughts. Is just, why not have both systems? Why not have, if I, because I can go out and grab a PF 500 if it makes sense for me for something like, Mark's talking about on one of his trips, and has that lightweight option. It's packable and you can still have the reach. And I can do that if I have a Nikon body, you know what I mean? So I don't know. That's kind of my thought process right now, is just to kind of have both options available. So much is changing, and you can't just keep switching, right? I can't afford to just keep switching. So,
Well, my big question is, like with the R5, is you can buy the adapter so you can put on an EF lens. So I would probably just use the 200 to 400, right? But is it going to be as fast And is that image stabilization really going to work when you got a big old heavy lens like that? I mean, I can't hold that sucker handheld and keep at 560 when I got the 1.4 engaged. You know, is that, I mean, if I can do it, if you can handhold that and get some steady video, like right on. But I just have serious doubts that it'll do that. I mean, anytime you involve an adapter, I have a friend across the street that shoots Sony, and she kept all her Canon lenses, but it's not nearly as fast with the focus when you put an adapter in between the mix. Now, Canon has the advantage just because I'll be using a Canon lens with a Canon adapter and a Canon camera. Maybe that'll make it better. I'm hoping it will, because I don't really want to go out and buy all these lenses because I'm not that jazzed about, you know, this is all predicated on not having looked at the lenses yet. And maybe f11, if I shoot my red at f11, which I do a lot because I have to cheat on the focus because you're dealing with manual focus, and I want as big an area as I can get on a moving animal, it still looks really awesome. I can still blow out the background at f11 on the red. If you can do that with this, maybe that f11 would be fine. I don't know. But I am the older Mark gets, since he just had a birthday, you know, the less weight we all want.
Well, but no, hey, really time out real quick too, because on the last podcast, Mike, you had with Matt, was that his name,
Matt
right?
Haig.
Matt, and you guys were talking about it, and it's something that finally dawned on me. There's something that I just wasn't really liking about the Sony system, and a lot of it has to do with the look of the images and the feel of the images. And he mentioned it, and I actually need to do more research into this because I think there might be something in what he's saying about how on the DSLR, the mirrored bodies, you have a little more space between the sensor and the glass, and that helps with that aperture and that bokeh feel and the way the way the image feels. And boy, it just clicked with me. I had been looking for the words to put behind what I was having to struggle with on that Sony 2-6. And now, in all fairness, I haven't shot a prime Sony lens yet, and I want to see if I can, if I get that feel. But I'm telling you, and I've said it 100 times on the podcast, I just love shooting my Nikon with that prime 500 millimeter lens, and it's all about the feel that I get from that, the way the images come out. So I don't know. There's something to that too, for whatever it's worth, Mark, that I think is worth considering if you're thinking about doing the mirrorless thing.
I agree with you 100%. When he was saying that, that's when it clicked with me too. I didn't really think about it, and I don't know. Did you guys get exactly what we're talking about?
In talking to a couple people that have shot the Canon R, they've done it with adapted glass, and the new adapter that has the drop-in capability. So they've said that that's the big advantage is once you get the glass a little bit away from the sensor, so you use that adapter, which gives you like an extra inch away from the sensor, and then you can start to get some of that feel back. But yeah, I've heard that from several people now. I mean, once you hear it once and it's a conversation that you're really in tune and listening to, then you start to pick it up from other people and in other people's conversations. And that was one of, there are a lot of disadvantages to using an adapter, but that was one of the advantages. It's just kind of gaining that distance back, just like you were saying, Jason. That was a huge rabbit trail.
Yeah.
I'm still tempted by that 1-5, even at 7.1. For big animals, if it's compact and pulls it all off, that'd be still sweet at 7.1. If you're on a big moose or a caribou or two animals together, I want to be at 7.1 anyway. So if it's a small kit, but like you were pointing out, Jason, I mean, what you get in post is so important, and something we work so hard at is what the images look like when they go out the door. For those in pursuing this in a serious fashion that are really trying to manage light well and colors well and contrast, all the elements of an image, I mean, it's important. So there may be some research required into these different cameras and sensors that way. I mean, I don't know how deep we'd have to dig to find out, but I would want to do that before investing and switching a new setup. And I appreciate hearing your experience and perspective too. Definitely. I mean, I love the 850, the colors, the sensor, what I get on the computers, what I like to see. I haven't shot the others to know.
Well, I think what Ron said is probably the best thing to do. Wait a month and then rent I don't even
Sure.
know if these
Right.
cameras will show up in a rental house before, within a month. That'd be great. But there's going to be a huge demand, I'm sure. But if you can just rent one and try it out, I mean, that's probably the best way to do it.
And this is waiting game too. I mean, if this stuff is actually coming down the pipeline with Nikon, could be pretty exciting. But that's a whole season or year of shooting that we have to wait.
That was what they said, was it would be 2021 likely.
Well, and everything's been put on the back burner because of COVID, right? I mean, from a supply side, I mean, I'm hearing that there's lots of stuff out there in the system, but they can't get components. So, even though they have the stuff out there to make the equipment, they can't get the equipment. And if you go looking for a new camera body, new lens right now, it's pretty thin pickings right now. So
for sure. I looked, Ron and I were talking a couple of weeks ago in the 500 PF. I was trying to get, I mean, it's one thing I've missed about the podcast is just being up to speed and having conversations about this stuff, because you all do different research. And I mean, historically, Ron is my go-to guy on this stuff too, just out of experience. And when I mentioned the 500 PF, he said he's heard great things, but good luck getting one.
yeah.
So I looked into it, and that week there weren't any anywhere. But when things started to slowly open up, there's obviously some distribution or production, and I saw one available. I didn't move on it, obviously, but who knows? Hopefully that will improve. And obviously Canon's got to have their game on if they're bringing the camera out at the end of this month or now, right? So
Yeah.
That's my big question too, is because there's already a lot of demand for this camera. Everybody's been waiting for it, and we'll see if they can produce,
Who knows?
with that kind of volume. Yeah.
Well, Harlan texts me every day, and he's like, "I want my camera. I want my camera." That new R5. He's got it. He's on the list, and he's just like going nuts. He wants that thing so bad. So.
And that R5 takes a whole nother new card too, right? Or is it?
It takes a CF Express and SD UHS 2.
But a CF
It uses-
Express is different than a CFast, right?
Yes, it is, and it's an XQD. It's basically in the XQD card body, but it's a different technology, which is much faster. It's like 1,000 megabytes a second that it can write.
Which would have to be the reason why it could shoot 8K. I mean, that's the whole. Before that camera came out, I'm like, there's just no way you're going to get a little itty bitty camera like that can record 8K and not have it be compressed like crazy compression and just. I mean, I could see myself never even liking the footage, but then you hear about it and it's like 8K raw.
8K raw, yeah.
So that means you have a little latitude in post production, and all of a sudden it's everybody's saying, oh yeah, you only got 20 minutes of 8K, but for what we do, 20 minutes is fine. I mean, I think I was talking with Jason the other day. There's no situation most of the time in wildlife stuff that's going to last longer than 20 minutes. The animal's either going to change locations and it's not going to be good. The light's going to change or something. Even, some of the bear fights that I've shot, they last a couple of minutes, right? So you're not going to really, I mean, if you just manage the camera right, or manage your time right, or manage the situation right, you should be just fine. But in the reality, how many people are going to shoot 8K, and why do you need 8K?
Right. How many people can edit 8K?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Have a fast enough computer to even edit it. And the only thing you said that the other day, Michael, and the only thing I could think of was you get lucky and you find an antelope that's about to give birth, or a deer, or an elk, or bison, moose, whatever, and you may be sitting on that for a while.
Yeah.
But even then, you're going to film the highlights. You're not going to film the whole, hour and a half scenario.
Right.
So yeah, it's I think you're absolutely right. For us, it's great, and that the 8K I could see using if you were going to crop. But really, I think the 4K option excited me more with the 120.
Right. And that's the same thing I have with the Red, right? I have 8K capabilities, but I very seldom shoot in 8K for two reasons. One is I can't play it on my computer. So I don't know, I have to look at it at 1/16th resolution to actually just watch and, to actually play it. And then at 1/16th resolution, I can't tell if it's in focus or not. And then the second thing is if on the red, if I go to 4K, then all of a sudden I'm magnifying my lens, right? So I can go from a 500 to an 800. I don't even know what the numbers are. I'm just throwing that out there. But if I'm shooting with my 2:4 and I go from 8K to 4K, all of a sudden I get that much more reach. So for wildlife, obviously we all want that. So I'm always shooting at 4K anyways, even on an 8K camera. So I don't know. I just don't know that there's that much need. There will be. I'm sure the 8K TVs are probably already out, but as far as being out for the masses, it's probably going to be a while.
Well, and then...
and that isn't even the best part.
Black Magic just came out with a 12K cine camera.
Oh my heck.
The Ursa Mini. Black Magic Ursa Mini 12K capability. And now
right into that footage.
I am, yeah.
That's crazy.
I am probably 3 generations of computers away from being able to edit that.
Which means
if you're 3, I'm like 5. So,
which means I'll be 80 before we can afford a computer that's fast enough.
I'll forget how to run a camera long before I'll be able to edit that footage.
Right.
I don't know. Is that all we wanted to do on that?
That was pretty thorough.
Yeah.
I think we thoroughly beat that horse. Yeah.
The only thing I'll add real quick is this is a plea to Nikon. So I know all the Nikon, execs are listening to the podcast. So please give us the firmware upgrade on the 850 so we can use those CF Express cards. And then all of a sudden we don't have any more buffer issues on that camera. But of course, I know we probably won't do that because that'll be with the D860 and a higher megapixel body and so on and so forth.
So with that card, that card would actually go in an 850 then,
because it's the same card as the XQD. It's just got different internal components, and it's I think it's the same card that the Canon 1DX Mark III.
Oh, probably so.
Uses.
Probably so.
Has 2 slots.
Mark.
Mr. Raycroft.
So while Raycroft is out paddling his canoe in Algonquin, he's missed this information. Shooting in 850, I've never really had buffer issues. Are you talking about when you're like shooting in 4K video that you've hit that threshold, or is it just bursts of images when something exciting is happening that you've actually hit the buffer limit?
Yeah, it's just in the burst of images. I've never had an issue from a 4K standpoint or video standpoint, but
I did.
And it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen very often, but it does recover pretty quick. It clears the buffer pretty good, but once in a while it does. It's a little annoying. But
sure, I haven't had that happen. So on my XQD card, I haven't been in the right place at the right time. So Jason, I want to go with you. We've talked about this over the past couple of years. I haven't had the opportunity to meet up in the field yet, but maybe if I get to go with you, I'll have that experience, which would be a highlight.
Well, if you're shooting with me, you'll just hear me doing it, and then you'll automatically do it. So.
Oh, okay. Right. Okay.
Because sometimes I get a little trigger happy. But
shoot now. Yes.
I hit it for the first time with video. It was like 2 weeks ago. It was up in Yellowstone or Grand Teton National Park, and I couldn't figure out what was wrong with my camera. Wouldn't shut off, and I couldn't. When I would turn it back on, I couldn't get it to do anything else. And then I finally realized I've been filming in 4K for probably 8-10 minutes, and it was still writing to the card. So it took forever for it to clear. But that was the first. I'd never hit it with stills. That was the first time that I hit it with video. But it took a long time. And I think, like Michael said, that's definitely why they're using that card. Is it's the only thing fast enough right now to write that much information to a memory card, and you only get one. The good news is you can buy CF Express cards that are 1 terabyte of memory.
How much are those?
Yeah.
I don't know. If we get sponsored by the right company, they're
free,
heavily discounted.
Well, that was the big drawback to red, right? Because you buy a 512 card that is proprietary red, and you're looking at 2,000, or I don't even know. It's in the thousands just for a card that was only 512, and it's proprietary. But now all these faster cards would probably work in the red, but they're not going to do that, right? They want to make their money on their cards. So, but the new red that came out, it's called the Komodo. It actually, I think, works on the CFast. It's either the CFast or this what is it called? C Express? CF
CF
CF Express.
Yeah. And that's the one advantage that I've seen that and again, they haven't come out with the official announcement yet, but the Sony AS3 has an external recorder, so you can just use a SSD drive and record directly on an SSD drive with that camera, supposedly. We'll know, I guess it's a week from when we're recording. So July 28th, they're supposed to come out with that announcement with all the specs, and so we'll know what that camera is going to be. But
okay, now I think we beat that horse to death.
Now it's gone.
You guys have to encourage the audience to go. I mean, I'm just saying this today, and maybe I've missed this visual, but Ron is bringing his A game for the background for YouTube. And I need to get schooling from Mr. Hayes on how he does this, where he's positioned in front of his images. There's a bear that keeps whispering in his ear, sitting on his shoulder, nibbling on his earlobe. It's ready for YouTube. This is the show. Check it out.
So what you have to do is you have to delay the beginning of the podcast for about 20 minutes
to figure it out.
To be able to figure it out. Yeah.
So I was working on something pretty cool, and I still haven't figured it all out, but I was talking about this time-lapse project that we were going to start, and I was trying to design. I don't know if we're going to have power at this location, so I was in a conundrum because it's going to have to run off solar, and it's got to run reliably. So I've spent the last week trying to build a solar-powered time-lapse waterproof system. And I'll have to give you a full-on report next week. But there's all these little components. And you can go buy this whole... Now, this is all to work with like a GoPro. So I did a 6-month time-lapse project for a client a couple of years ago. And we actually did use some GoPros. And then we used some Panasonics. And then we used some Canon. We used everything. I even used some trail cameras because the trail cameras would actually, you could program them to like come on at 7 a.m. and go off at 7 p.m. and shoot whatever frequency you wanted throughout the day. Whereas most traditional camera systems, you don't have that ability. So back when we did that original project, it would record throughout the night. So can you imagine how many just black images we had to delete? But we couldn't figure out how to program these cameras. There was nothing out there really to program them at that point. But there was one company called Canoe, and they are set up to basically just run the GoPro, a GoPro 8, GoPro 7 and 8 with this little add-on piece so that I can schedule it just like that. But the big question is keeping constant power, which is going to have to be done through solar because I don't know if this place that we're going to be shooting actually has power. So I'll give you the full-on rundown. But I'm building it for a client, or building the system to shoot for a client, which is a commercial project. But I got to thinking it'd be kind of cool to be able to set it up in some remote location. It's not something that you'd want to put in a highly visited area just because it probably wouldn't last very long. But if you did some backcountry hiking, 10 miles out of the way and just found a cool spot where who knows what, a bighorn sheep might come out on the edge of a cliff or something that
Algonquin.
Our friend John Timmer, didn't he master that in a sense with I don't want to give away any of his secrets here. Sorry, John, if it is. I hope it's not. But the idea of setting up a trail camera like that on a log over a river or something.
Right.
I've seen footage from the eastern U.S. that went crazy viral on YouTube of like a year of this log. And you get all these amazing animal things crossing it, and it's just put together in a collage one after the other. Pretty amazing footage. So if you had a place like that,
it'd be awesome.
Want the metal housing locked to the tree, because some of these animals, bears in particular, are quite curious. So you want it solid. But that'd be a fun wildlife application. But this sounds like the perfect project for you. And I want to say that's why you deserve the big bucks. I mean, to design this stuff, all the gear is what you do. So that's pretty cool. I look forward to hearing about it.
Well, we'll see if I can actually
Hope
pull it
it
off.
works. Well, that's what I'm saying. I hope it's slick. Well, the other one was years ago. That time-lapse was awesome to watch. So
It was cool, but I don't know. It's kind of fun because I do enjoy that kind of stuff. But then I was thinking, you know, and with wildlife, I think it'd be really cool with video, right? So then you'd have to incorporate some sort of motion sensor that would trigger the camera on, and then it would have to go into video mode, and then I guess record for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, and then
camera trap mode. And
Ron Niebrugge. Talk to Ron about that.
Yep.
He might know how to, but actually I think the video I was thinking, it wasn't stills. I think maybe I've seen both, but there were video ones as well on this log kind of thing. And it's not the kind of footage that you're going to run on BBC or National Geographic, but it's certainly applicable for YouTube for these trail cameras. And there are models now that, you know, you get lithium AA's, 8 of those are run during, you know, seasonable weather, not middle of winter, but will run for several months, if not longer, on one set of batteries. And then there are also some cameras that I have not tested, so I don't know how reliable they are, that actually have a little solar panel on them that's supposed to last longer. But again, you wouldn't necessarily get the quality of commercial footage that you're targeting. But as far as storytelling, it would be good.
Or viral video, right? Because I think the one thing that you were talking about, John Timmer actually had, didn't he have a mountain lion walking across that log that he was able to get?
Mountain lion, yeah.
Which is pretty
Check
darn
him out
cool.
on Instagram.
Yeah.
John Timmer.
A lot of other stuff, but that mountain lion was awesome.
Sorry, Ron.
Oh, no, that's okay.
Jontimmer. Talented photographer from the Pacific Northwest. That's cool. Future podcast on that.
Hopefully,
right? Your setup.
If it all works.
Yeah. The air high five we get to do digitally here.
And then, so what else do you guys have? Because I have one more thing.
Oh, I think, go ahead. I've got the log. Once you get it done, I've got the log with this nice creek crossing, and once you figure it out, I've got the testing spot.
And it's remote?
It's private land. Nobody's ever going to be down there.
Oh, all right. So I did a podcast last week with a woman named Cheryl Opperman. She's a pro wildlife photographer here in Denver, and I just met up with her in Rocky Mountain National Park, and we needed a podcast, and I'd take my podcast stuff, and I just said, hey, would you mind doing a podcast? And we did it. So that's the one that ran last week, so you all probably heard that. But in the course of that conversation, we got to talking about social media and all the images that get stolen on social media. Or, you know, I was referencing the bear video that I shot with the cone. And she said that she'd been thinking long and hard about this for a while, because she doesn't put a lot of stuff on social media just because she doesn't want it stolen. And she was thinking that it might be kind of cool to start our own hashtag that would be just ask the artist. And I thought that was kind of a cool idea. So, I mean, if everybody just asks the artist, put that hashtag in every post that you do, maybe we can have a little movement where people that have a question might just ask first. I mean, a lot of times I would probably, if it's a reputable organization, for sure, I'm going to let them use an image, right? But some of the, you know, that bear thing was crazy. I mean, I lost control of that within the first 24 hours. And then it didn't do any good. So I don't know. What we decided we would do is she wrote up a whole description of what you can do with that hashtag, and we'll put it on our website. So wildandexposed.com/just ask the artist. And then you can read this description of how, you know, just how to respect copyright and what copyright is, and, you know, that sort of thing. So I thought it was kind of an interesting idea, and I think it's something that we should all at least talk about or promote or see if we can gain any traction.
I think that's a great idea. I'll start doing that. Cheryl's a great lady. I had the privilege of meeting her about 10 years ago in the middle of the remote Alaskan wilderness with Ron Niebrugge and his wife and my son Andrew. We spent a whole day with caribou together and had a fun shoot. She's a very talented photographer. So yeah, obviously, if you haven't listened to that podcast, go back to it and catch up on last week's, given the time frame of how this works. Mind warp here. We're talking, but it's not out yet. But it's out now. Really?
Yeah.
Okay, there we got that straight. But it's the social media thing. That's one thing I was going to get into with you guys, but I don't know. Time probably doesn't warrant it today.
Oh yeah, we're going to do a 2 or 3 hour podcast here, so keep on going.
The watermark's important, but then there's really that percentage of the social media world that doesn't even understand the relevance of it.
And that when they repost, they crop it out anyway.
Well, but then they do understand. If they're doing that, then that's bad news. But there's so many that do it, even in my credit. But even though it says, like on my page, I mean, I enjoy sharing things with like-minded people, and social media is important nowadays for promotion. I heard on a podcast that you talented guys did not too long ago, talking about how for most applications, websites are pretty well obsolete. I mean, I still get clients through websites, and I still have orders through the websites, but really far more people find through social media. And I still don't post pictures myself on Facebook other than my travel pictures, to have a placeholder there where people can find me because of what I understand of the public domain issues of Facebook. But I do on Instagram, and they're watermarked. I don't want to talk too long about this myself here, but it's always, you have to do it if you want to promote yourselves globally these days, and you have to accept a bit of that loss as far as image accountability. You hope it doesn't happen. It's always that when you see it, and then you see who did it and decide, based on the page, is it an automatic block? Is it a direct message explaining nicely? This past week there were 2 or 3 that reposted. I sent a direct message, and they were super nice about it. They replied saying, didn't realize that, so sorry, respect what you do, and they took it down right away. Now I'm following them, and there's a relationship there because of how well they respected it and handled it. I'm also still making money off of more and more people using them without permission on a corporate level and as an artist reference level for those that are selling art professionally. And if it's a piece that's selling for several hundreds or even $4,000 or $5,000 and it's from an image, then there's a bill to be paid. That's still happening. So it's a weird, frustrating source of income, and thankfully they'll all of those in North America accept what they've done and respect the original source of the art. And then some of them keep working together, right? But it's a stressor. I hate doing that. I hate having that conflict. We all work hard at this. You guys are all talented at creating what you do. And if some people use it, so that's a great idea to add a new hashtag that links into some kind of information that way as well. But anyway, sorry. There's lots to talk about on Instagram. The other thing I don't understand, is a whole other subject. And Ron's like, here he goes. You guys sure you want me to be on the podcast here with you? is the whole difference of these sites reposting. And I've had some people repost and they've got 1 million followers, and that's a big boost. It's great. They've given credit. It's good. But then you have another site that a new page that they've been up for a week. They put up 40 pictures in the past day. They grabbed one of yours and put it up. And I still see people, photographers that I respect and some that I even love, these people thanking them for it. And I know it's an old can of worms here, Michael, but for me, it's like I work hard at what I do. I ask for permission to repost, and I hope that that's done out of respect for the art that we all do, the work that we do, the money we spend on these trips, the sweat, the blood, not the blood. Nobody has. Sorry, that's too far. Oh, your microphone's not on, Ron. Yeah, said, probably better what you're saying.
There's been blood. You remember I was wedged between 2 rocks when we were photographing doll sheep.
A tiny little bit. Yeah. That was worth it, though. That was no
And
pain, no gain moment.
I've looked at a couple pages lately that kind of like what you're talking about. New pages are trying to gain traction. So they're just nabbing pictures from the best ones that they can find. And I think, honestly, I think it's the same group of people, and they get shut down on one, and then they just turn right around and start another one, do the same thing. As soon as somebody turns them in, they get shut down again, and it's just one after another. But
I think some people believe in the philosophy that being such an open social media platform, that the more places their work's reposted, irrelevant of if anybody's going to see it on these new pages, it's a way to grow, and so they express gratitude. And maybe I'm just too old school, but I don't mind if somebody asks and it's a suitable application, then that's okay. But I'm also working with all kinds of clients, and I just don't need it going everywhere out there. And that causes me to have some, like Cheryl, some reluctancy to put up a tremendous amount of images, or my favorite images. There's some holding back at times because of that concern.
So Mark, one thing you can do, and I know you know this, is you can make your page private.
But then how do people find you, right?
I get it, right? So then they get it from references and other people. That makes it much more difficult for people to find your page, for sure.
Yeah.
But that is a way to control that.
Right.
But you're right. They don't have a good solution. I mean, and I block people. I block somebody every few days. I block somebody that's just out grabbing a picture from me.
Right.
If they and I do the same tact you have. I try to approach them. If they're good about it, then they apologize, they take it down, they fix it, whatever. We're all good. A lot of times I end up following them, like you said, same thing. Becomes a mutual beneficially mutual relationship. But a lot of them, they just don't even care. And I think it's like Ron said, they're just out there nabbing stuff and they're hoping for something to stick. And I just block them. I don't even waste my time. But you're right. I mean, it's just a risk you take, and I don't know if there is an answer. I haven't come up with a good one. But
low res watermark. It's got to be small files. I mean, I think I'm down to most of them under 200 kilobytes, and just manage it, right?
Yeah.
And like anything in the profession, I mean, for me, I summarize it that I feel extremely blessed and grateful for what I do. And that's a small negative part that I don't want to spend much time focusing on, because we're all privileged with our lifestyles and what we get to experience in the wilderness, and to get paid to do that on any level is pretty cool. So I'm grateful. But social media, it's repetitive. I don't want to say it, but I know we've talked about this over the years. When I started. No, I can't say it. Yeah. I got into this profession. The guy who was mentoring me, I didn't want to send out my best images. They were on a format that I'm not allowed to mention. And he said, either you're in this profession or you're not. I think now social media is that way. There's enough positive connectivity. There's some amazing people out there. I've met so many photographers or photography enthusiasts through social media, and clients, that it's a vital tool. It doesn't generate as much revenue as I had dreamt of yet. I did my first test like a week ago, where I put up an image thanks to Harlan's great idea of best wildlife photo hashtag. I'd have to look it up, but it was a great idea and caught on like wildfire. And so I put up a good image, and I saw some of the previous posts were making it kind of a spin promotion. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to throw this out there and say, this image is available on these 2 sizes of canvas and these 2 sizes of metal, and let's see what happens. And it wasn't as fruitful as I had hoped it would be. But then that's a whole other conversation. I don't know about you, Jason. You have an amazing and warranted following on Instagram. And what I've noticed, if you were to look at my page 10,000 followers ago, I'm not getting any more likes per image than I did then. And the math doesn't add up. How can I have, 1 year I can have 10,000 followers and I'm getting 2,500 likes an image. Then a couple of years later, I have 30,000 followers and I'm still getting 2,500 likes an image. It's like,
the The short answer is the Instagram algorithm continues to change.
It does,
That's
right?
Yeah. So that's the bottom line. There's nothing. I mean, and not that it matters, not to even throw numbers around, but I'm close to 60,000 followers now, and my likes are around 2,000 to 3,000 per image. And it's just, you can almost just count on it. It doesn't seem to matter what kind of image it is. Doesn't seem to matter if it's a good or a bad image. Just is going to get about 2,000 or 3,000 likes. So I just don't even worry about it. I just don't sweat it. I don't care. I'm doing my thing. It frustrates me because I'd like it to reach the folks that I would think are following me because they want to see my work.
Right.
But beyond that, I don't know what to do, And I'm playing Instagram's game, right? It's their platform. It's not costing me anything. I try to look at all the positives.
That's right. Well, I tried a promotion last week too. I did pay for a 6-day promotion just to see what that would do. I enjoy it. I enjoy Instagram. I love seeing all of your work and so many people from across the planet. So much inspiration out there. I love seeing some of the whale photography and videos. It's just so much visual eye candy. That should even be more flattering than that. It's a great platform. So I do enjoy it. It's just from a mathematical mind, some of it I stall out and wonder about that way, but it's still, to me, worth doing financially. The other thing is clients find, and then for those that are interested to do photo workshops and tours, it's a great way to market that kind of stuff as well. But
I think if we do this hashtag, it might help with some of the education, of just,
Great.
Hey, we spend a lot of money, time, and effort to get these images. Just don't steal them. You can ask, and most of the time, if somebody asks me, I'm going to let them, as long as they give me a photo credit.
Yeah.
I gained a ton of followers just by putting up that viral video of that cone, that bear in that cone. So, and I still get them I don't know when I put that up, probably a couple months ago, but I still get followers every day just off of that one video.
I can't tell you how many times my mom has reposted it. She didn't even know where it came from.
I've seen it everywhere, and I love it. And I saw a bunch with your watermark, so I was like, great. And then I see them without the watermark, and I'm like, oh no.
Yeah, who took the time to go take the watermark out?
Yeah. Crop into a 720p video just to get rid of the watermark so you can say it's yours.
Yeah, it was crazy.
And then I've seen it allocated for every area in North America where grizzlies exist.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and I have people commenting all the time. They're like, no, that's not a grizzly bear. That's a black bear.
Mm.
Oh,
I get a lot of that, too.
that was probably my mother.
I think viral video gets you lots of exposure, too. So the more we all talk about these cameras that can shoot video, and the more we're out there, and man, if these cameras are small enough and they're light enough and they're steady, you don't need a gimbal anymore to get steady footage. I mean, what are the chances of getting really stellar wildlife viral moments?
Yeah, those ladies that just got molested by the black bear. They're all over the place, even the Aussie man. So all you have to do is stand there and let a black bear come bite you on the thigh.
Well, here's the lesson on that I learned through putting up the bear and the cone. Don't put it up. There's 10 or 12 or 20 companies out there, and I've got all their contact info now because they all reached out and wanted to license my footage. I think the smartest way to do that is don't put it out, just license it. If you've got some viral moment, don't even do it, because you will lose control so fast that by the time they come knocking on your door, it's not valuable to them anymore. So that was my lesson, right? That went viral. Then all these companies call me and we want to license that video. And I'm like, okay, what the heck? Let's try it. You know how much money I've made off of that?
No.
Zero.
Don't say it.
Zero.
Really?
But I think it just went too crazy too fast, and then it just appeared everywhere. I think part of it's the COVID thing too. And they've sent out emails saying, our sales are way down just because of the economy at the moment. But that's what I would do. If I got some sort of viral video, I'd just contact one of these media organizations where they're selling it for Fox News or BBC or whoever wants to buy it just to gain exposure for their page.
So for our listeners, how would they? Sorry.
Yeah, no. Go ahead, Mark.
Jason, just how would they find that? What would you Google search to find somebody or to be able to review who would purchase this?
I don't know. I guess I could put up I could go back through mine and just see which ones inquired with. And it's amazing how they found me. I don't know. I mean, they were finding all my email address. I got emails from all kinds of different email addresses. And so I could throw up a couple and just put it out there, and they're constantly looking for that latest and greatest. I mean, I'm sure if these people that with the bear thing you're talking about, Ron, where those 3 gals are standing there, if they'd have done that, because I've seen it 50 times already.
Yeah, Aussie Man even did a review on it.
Oh.
And it's worth finding.
I bet I might have to listen to that.
I bet that's a funny one. That would be a good one. All right. So anything else we got?
Well, I think that's
go ahead, Jason.
Well, I just think that's a great just to sneak in. That's a great pro tip for our listeners, because how many times do you just get so excited and you got this cool video and you just throw it up and, oh, look what I got, world. And you may have just missed a huge opportunity to cash in on something.
Right.
So
I know I'm kind of holding back the top 10 bison flips that I've been able to capture over the years. But
there's one account that I'm not going to say the name of, but I think we all follow, and they just had a clip on today, and it was the classic Hollywood horror thing where a bison is running after these 2 people, and what happens to the person behind? They trip and fall. It was just so classic. It's like exactly what's supposed to happen in Hollywood, and it happened in real life. And this bison goes right up to this person, and I think it was a she. You're looking at such a small screen, it's hard to tell, but she had to have needed diapers because this bison is just standing right over her, just looking right at. And it was just so funny. 2 people are running. One of them, of course, falls, and then that bison is just right there on it. It was amazing.
And for the sake of the listeners going to sleep tonight, she survived.
Oh yeah. The bison never touched her, which was interesting. Okay. But I'm sure she's just like you said, needed diapers, and then it messed around for probably 10, 15, 20 terrifying seconds, and then it just kind of ran off. And then the person that was ahead of her that didn't fall ran back and grabbed this person, and probably had to carry him off the field. So I think I sent it to you guys. I'll find it. I sent it to somebody, so I'll send it to you guys. I'm sure you saw it, though.
Well, I think that is a great place to call it for tonight.
Hold on, we got one more. We got to talk about our part-time co-host.
I was getting there.
Oh, I thought you were just signing us out.
He just stole his thunder.
Sorry. I forget that Ron is so witty and that he's got this all under control.
Jeez, give a guy a chance to fail before you shut him down. Before we do, we'd like to welcome Mark Raycroft back to the Wild and Exposed podcast. We once again have a north of the border influence. And Mark, you've been missed, except for that. No, but you have been missed, and we're happy that you can be back in whatever capacity that brings us all together in. Miss those times in the field. Look forward to more. And yep, virtual hug.
Yeah,
hug it out,
great.
baby.
It's a treat to see your faces, and it's a lot of fun to communicate with all 3 of you, and I'm excited and look forward. Like, go over one more time. You only die once, but you live every day. I want to live every day. I want to plan for adventures, and I'd love to do more and more adventures with you guys, and storytelling linked to that, and meeting like we have over the 2 years I was involved, amazing guests from across the planet, hearing their stories. And like I said, I've been listening this spring, and you guys have it's been an A game all the way through. So I'm grateful to be back on with you, and enjoyed everything you guys have been up to, and it's just great to see your faces, and I look forward to it.
I know you would know this now. I don't know it yet, but once a guy turns 60, you start to reflect a little bit differently.
Yeah, no, I'm nowhere near that age, so it's all full steam ahead. And hopefully with this smidgen of wisdom to it, but otherwise, yeah, no, it's still a young whippersnapper.
All right, Mark, give us one of those. You've been listening to Wild and Exposed. We haven't had one of those for seven months now.
You've been listening to Wild and Exposed podcast. Thanks for tuning in.
You've been listening to the Wild and Exposed podcast. If you haven't yet, please give us a rating and a review. And make sure you're subscribed so that you'll get every episode we produce as soon as we drop it. And as always, thanks for tuning in.
We're gonna make it someday. Nothing's gonna get in our way.